Welcome to the Project Management PrepCast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome back to the Project Management PrepCast. We're the good, better and best PMP exam preparation course. All in one. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. Quite often, project management is not totally black and white. It's a fact. As a project manager, you can respond in various ways to events. This means that you are not only faced with the issue that you may have a personality conflict on your team, but you must also decide whether to address this conflict directly with the team members or if it would be better to come up with a team building exercise that may help your team to overcome the situation. And what if, during your PMP exam, a question just like this one comes up and you'd have to choose? Which one would be the one to choose? Well, you'd simply have to find the best answer to the question, which is what we will explore in the coming slides. We'll see some sample exam question types, approaches to answer these sample exam questions, and also how to determine if you may be ready to take the exam. First things first. Your job during the exam is often that of having to identify the best answer, and not simply the correct one. The PMP exam has 200 multiple-choice questions that need to be answered in 4 hours. For each question, you're given a scenario, along with 4 answers, A, B, C, D, to choose from. And just like you see here on the screen, more often than not, 2 or even 3 of the available answers may look correct. So your task is to first eliminate the obviously wrong answers and then select the best one from among those that seem to be correct. And just as a chess player must learn the abilities and values of each chess piece on the board before they can master the game, so will you have to learn the mechanics of taking the PMP exam and what to expect, when to arrive at the testing center in terms of the types of exam questions that you will be asked. Being able to answer sample exam questions is crucial to your success. Sounds simple? In concept, yes. After all, your exam will only consist of multiple choice questions. However, there are a number of question types, and each has their purpose and caveats, which makes knowing how to get the most out of each question exponentially crucial. And here are the 5 types of questions that you can expect to see on the exam. They are formula-based questions, situational questions, knowledge questions, interpretational questions, and questions that require you to understand a specific technique. Let's look at each in detail to see what you'll have to expect and know. There are around 50 formulas that you must know for the PMP exam, so you can expect to see several formula-based questions on the exam. Some are complex and others may be simple, like what is the depreciation rate of an item that costs $500 and has a useful life of 5 years? Well, that's easy because it's simple. 500 divided by 5, which is 50. No, I mean 100, of course. But that's exactly the point I wanted to make here. During the exam, you will have access to the built-in Windows-based calculator on the exam computer, and I strongly recommend that you use these calculators even for the simplest calculations. Otherwise, 500 divided by 5 suddenly becomes 50 instead of 100. Then we have situational questions. These test your ability to apply theoretical knowledge to real-life project management situations. Often these questions tend to be very long. The idea behind this is that, just as in real life, you'll be handed both relevant and irrelevant information, and your task is to identify what's relevant, ignore what doesn't matter, and then act upon the real issues. Be sure to read and accurately identify the actual question that is being asked of you so that you can eliminate the useless information. Knowledge-based questions are next. They require you to identify the meaning of the situation based on your understanding of the facts provided. These questions also occasionally ask, what is the exception? For example, all of the following are subsidiary plans of the project management plan, except. Knowledge-based questions may also ask you to identify an example chart or list, such as a Pareto diagram or a checklist. Then we have interpretational questions, which test your ability to deduce a situation or condition from the description of a status or problem. For example, what does it mean if planned value is greater than earned value? To solve this, you will need to know how earned value works and how these two values relate to each other so that you can interpret the situation. And then we have the specific technique question, tools and technique questions. They will provide you with a snapshot of a situation, like showing you a risk register and asking you to either identify how and when it is used or identify an element that is inherent to the tool, like the fact that the risk score is calculated using the probability and impact from the risk. So there you have it. If you want to pass your exam, you need to know about the different types of questions that you will see on the exam. And even more importantly, you need to practice them. So go ahead and begin by applying your knowledge that you have for the PMP exam on free questions first that you can readily find on the internet, or maybe even in the PMP exam prep workbook that you have purchased in your local bookstore or online. But then you need to move on. You need to move on to a high-quality online exam simulator, like our very own PM exam simulator. And of course, the more practice you have, the easier it will be for you to identify the best answer from each of the question types. And after all, practice makes perfect abbreviates to PMP. I know this all sounds simplistic, but it is no small task because you'll need to be able to recall and apply all the theoretical knowledge required, combine it with your project management experience, and relate it to the question at hand. There are 12 approaches that you can apply when you are trying to figure out the correct answer to any given exam sample question. Well, that's not quite true, really, because the last three that you just saw appear on the screen here, skip, stick to it, and guess, they're really approaches towards the exam as a whole and not towards the individual questions. Let's go through all of these in detail. We begin with head first, and by this we mean that after you read the scenario, come up with the answer in your head before taking a look at the answers that the exam is showing you. You may already know the answer without taking a look at the 4 answers provided. There's no need to allow the other 3 answers, the wrong ones, to confuse you if you already know the answer. Second, well, read the answers before reading the questions. This upside-down approach can be helpful in the case of very long questions. Go ahead and read the answers first. Now read the final sentence of the long question, and now read the whole question. This helps you to see what answers are available. And the last sentence in the question is usually where the real question can be found. Once you have taken this information in, you can read the scenario, and already knowing what possible answers you have will make it much easier for you. And then you should also try and eliminate any answers you know that are not correct. There are going to be times when you're going to be able to completely eliminate an answer because it's so out there. Maybe even two of them, which just you look at them and go, that's just completely wrong. It will make answering the question a lot easier because you now only have two possibly correct answers left, and the other two you don't have to worry about anymore. Then you also want to be wary of absolutes. Answers that contain absolutes, such as always, all, every, never, none, only. Now, they may look good, but remember, absolutes are a dangerous area in project management because there can always be an exception to them. So make sure you consider the restrictive nature of an answer that contains an absolute, because is it really always that we do it this way, or we do it never this way? So be wary of these absolutes. Also, doubt answers that just sound familiar to you. If any of the answers provided don't seem familiar to you or don't seem to fit with PMBOK guide language or terminology, there's a good chance that this is not the correct answer to the question. And when two answers seem correct, compare their differences. In the case of two answers that seem both to be correct, comparing their differences will possibly lead you to see minor, small differences between them, making one of them more correct. But the difference may just be that slight. Then you also want to select the answer that is most logical to you based on your studies. Remember, you have invested a lot of time studying for this exam, and that can't have been for nothing, right? So select the answer that seems to be most logical to you personally. Then for formula questions, if you are familiar with the formula, well, do the work first. Do the calculations before you look at the answer, because the good thing about formula questions, well, there is only one correct answer, and that's definite. For those questions that you are not familiar with, you're not quite sure about the formula, well, try to work the problem backwards. 4 answers are given, so which one can you prove? Which one is the correct answer that you can prove by calculating it backwards? And let me remind you that even though the gentleman here in this picture is holding a calculator in his hands, you're not actually allowed to bring a calculator into the testing room. Your exam will be on a Windows-based computer, and you can use the built-in calculator. So a good idea is start using the Windows calculator today on your own machine so that you sort of start getting comfortable with it and you know where all the various buttons are. And finally, we come to approaches 10 to 12. And as I mentioned in the overview, these are not really question approaches, they're more exam approaches. They help you to get to grips with the exam as a whole. And the first one here is skip. Everybody has favorites. So instead of forcing yourself to waste time on a question type that is more complex, more difficult for you, just mark that question for review, move on to the next one without answering it, and then come back later on. Keep the tough ones for last. This allows you to get the easy points, to get some confidence, and spend then the remaining time on those tougher questions that you have skipped. And then at the end of the exam, you are going to want to review and check your answers. That's only natural, but please, only change an answer for a really, really good reason. Your first choice is generally your best one, so only make changes if you are sure, maybe if clues have been given by another answer. For example, in question 137, you selected A, and therefore you go back to question 42 and you see, if I selected A in 137, I have to change my answer in 42 because it's only logical. It can't be C, it has to be D, so that the two questions match up. So only change it if you're really, really sure. And lastly, answer each question, even if you have to guess. There's no penalty for guessing on the exam. There's no penalty for answering a question wrong by guessing. There is, however, a penalty if you do not answer a question, because every question that you do not answer is considered wrong. So guess. Well, at least you have a 25% chance of guessing the correct answer. By the way, did you notice that I left out the most obvious approach? I mean, the one where you just read the question, then you read the answers, and you make your selection. I did that on purpose because, believe it or not, there's more to it than you think. So here is the traditional way. Start out by reading the question, and then make absolutely sure that you understand what is being asked. You want to do this because you have to understand what the real question is actually asking, and not what you think it is asking. Then you have to distinguish between the important facts and the extra information that you may be seeing in the question. And here it is important to learn to ignore those facts that really do not really relate to the question at hand. Once you are satisfied that you've read the question and that you truly understand what is asking for, then read all 4 possible answers and begin to eliminate until you have identified the best answer. Usually 1 or 2 of the 4 answers, they will be very obviously incorrect and they can be eliminated. Then weigh the 2 remaining answers against each other and make your choice. And that's it for our review of the question types and how to approach answering them. Let me finish, though, by answering one question that almost every single one of my students asks, and that's, of course, when do I know that I'm ready to take the exam? And frankly, that's a difficult question to answer because most of us will never feel ready to take the PMP exam. I can tell you, I certainly did not feel 100% ready to take it. But there is one metric that you can use: the percent of questions that you answer correctly. And here is what you have to do. Go ahead and answer as many new sample questions as you can, and do keep score of the first time that you answer the questions. If you are consistently answering 80% of new questions correctly, then you may consider yourself to be ready. And do remember, I am not saying 80% of all questions. I'm saying 80% of new questions. So don't go through the same 1,000 questions 4 or 5 times. The goal is to answer 800 of those 1,000 questions correctly on your very first try. So you have to always be on the lookout for new questions that you have never seen before. And note here, the word is may. May is highlighted because this 80% rule, it is just a guideline. Everybody is different and your mileage may vary. Let me try and explain this concept to you with this table here. It's completely made up data, and it is supposed to represent what I'm trying to explain. So the table is from an imaginary student who has kept track of 8 sets of questions that she has answered in preparing for her exam. You see the 8 sets listed on the left in the first column. Then, every time that she went through these sets of questions, she kept track of her result. You see that in the second, third, and fourth column, she noted the percent of correctly answered questions each time that she repeated going through the same set of questions. What you will notice is that the first time she answered the 53 questions in the first row, she only got 60% correct. Then she tried the same questions again and she got 72% correct. And on the third time she answered the same 50 questions, well, she got 94% correct. But that wasn't because she improved or learned new things. That's because she remembered what the correct answer was from the previous attempt. And that is true for all question sets that you will answer. If you answer the same questions over and over and over again, you'll get better because, well, you remember what the correct answer is. But on the PMP exam, you only get one try. You only get the first try. But now notice how the numbers in the first attempt column are slowly increasing. How she is slowly raising her score over time. She is doing this by answering questions, 53 questions there, then the 63 questions, the 33 questions, analysing what she did wrong, going back to the PMBOK guide, going back to the PrepCast, studying more, and then answering new questions, different questions from a different set. This is what we're talking about. This is what we are looking for. She is raising her score the first time she is answering questions. So try and keep track of your score in a similar way. This student here, if you look all the way down to the bottom with the exam simulator, she may consider herself to be ready to take the exam. Will she pass? Well, we don't know, but at least, like this, she has a performance indicator that she can use to guide herself toward exam readiness. And with that, we have come to the end of this lesson. So it's time for Justine to say,
Catch you on the flip side.
and it's until next time from me.